I doubt it comes as much of a surprise to you that I like to write. Most ministers who have to preach for a living enjoy writing. I like to write poetry, short stories, novels, brief reflections, and of course, sermons. But y'all, sometimes writing is really hard. And now generally I find it easy to write sermons, like really easy. Sometimes those sermons practically write themselves, and all I need to do is sort of show up and, preach. But not so this week. This week, the writer's block was strong with this one. As many of you who have ever had to write for a living likely know, it can sometimes be difficult to settle down and get the words out at all, let alone to get them out and down on paper in any kind of coherent form. I wrote a few words. I even managed to write several pages that belatedly I realized were an entirely different sermon entirely. So I deleted those words, then cursed myself for deleting those words instead of saving them for later. And then I wrote a few more words, and then I basically ran brain first into a mental wall. No more words. And there was nothing to do then but step back, eat a tub of ice cream, and go take a walk down the street, by which I mean a long, leisurely, meandering stroll down that part of the information highway known as Facebook. Some may call this procrastination. I prefer to call it seeking inspiration from many sources. And this week, one source of inspiration was a funny image posted by one of my UU ministerial colleagues who clearly was channeling similar issues. It was a picture of 3 little owls on a branch. 2 of the owls were perched side by side, looking all prim and proper and perfect. And then at the end of the branch was the 3rd owl, clinging upside down with its toes, its wings askew, trying to claw its way upright onto the branch. The prim and proper owls were labeled real adults, and the upside down owl was labeled me trying my best. Sometimes being an adult is hard, y'all. And I don't just mean hard for owls or for millennials like me who sometimes use the term adulting to refer collectively to all of those pesky tasks of daily living that are required to maintain a functional adult existence. Tasks like figuring out meals, 3 of them, every single day for the rest of your life. Or scheduling and paying bills for doctor and dentist appointments and doing other things regularly to attend to your health. Or being a responsible adult and writing your sermon and eating an actual meal instead of eating chocolate brownie ice cream and browsing Facebook. Adulting can be hard for us all, no matter our age, in part because there is so much that goes into adult life. There is an assumption in our society, one that we collectively maintain, that once we hit the magical age of 18, we'll somehow suddenly become masters of every single teeny tiny little dimension of this thing called life. Once we become adults, we're supposed to have it all figured out and all together, no matter the new challenges that each new decade of adult life may bring. That is, we're told, what it means to be an adult. And sure, at times we may feel like we are one of those calm and collected and competent owls in my colleague's post. We may get through a really busy day filled with all kinds of complicated or tedious tasks and feel like we are totally rocking this whole being an adult thing. I crushed that to-do list and it didn't faze me at all. I got everything done in this whirlwind of a day like a pro, and look, not a hair out of place. But we celebrate those days because I suspect they're less common than we might hope. Between those picture-perfect, Snapchat-filtered, Instagram-polished days, we may feel less like so-called real adults as we try to go about our lives, and more like the poor upside-down owl flapping our wings desperately, just trying to get up onto that branch. That's why posts like the one that my colleague made are shared over and over again until they go viral. I've seen some of you post things like it. Many of us, despite being adults for many years, feel like we're struggling to do all of the things that our society assumes so-called real adults should be mature enough to do every single day as responsible members of our society. As we affirm during our joys and sorrows each week, there's a lot going on in our lives, things that make it hard to win at adulting. We may have lost a loved one. We may be struggling with a serious illness. We may be facing job loss, financial distress, conflict in the home, or a family emergency. And the things that make our lives difficult, that make adulting a challenge at times, aren't even always painful. Sometimes our greatest joys can also create challenge for us. This morning we welcomed a new baby into our community. And as any of you who are parents know, the addition of a little one to a family, even when the parents are experienced, brings a whole new meaning to words like exhausted and busy. But here's the thing. The struggle is real, and we all have times when we're trying our very best and still finding adulting really hard. Does this truly mean that we're not real adults? That we're not mature during those times? Or is real maturity something deeper than checking off boxes on a daily task list? I recently read an article titled 30 Things You Should Be Able to Do by the Time You're 30, or something like that. And I will be turning 34 on October 25th, so I was curious, and maybe just a little bit on the anxious side, to see how I'm measuring up. Am I failing at being a 30-something, or do I get an A+? And the list included things like knowing how to cook, setting up a 401k, and changing a flat tire. Which is fine, I suppose. It's all important enough if maturity is primarily a matter of technical skill. But maturity has less to do with knowing how to cook and more to do with knowing how to respond in life-affirming ways to life's sorrows, joys, challenges, and opportunities. True maturity has to do with knowing who you are and who you have the potential to become, and what unique gifts you bring to the world to help make it a better place for all. I read a Dear Abby type article recently in which a mother asked some questions about her relationship with her gender non-binary child who had told her they were not a boy or a girl. The columnist encouraged the mother to take pride in the fact that she had raised a strong and independent child who not only knows themselves, but who has the courage to be their authentic self in the world, qualities that many people do not necessarily possess even as adults. Maturity, as one of the authors we heard from earlier pointed out, comes in many different forms, many different dimensions. A person might mature very young with regards to knowledge of themselves and the ability to exist authentically in the world long before they have matured in body or in years. Maturity also has less to do with setting up a 401k and more to do with setting up a life for yourself that aligns with your highest values. A life that allows you to cooperate creatively with the ultimate resources in life that give and sustain and transform life for the good. 3 of my go-to verses when I seek guidance to help align my life with my highest values come from Christian and Jewish scriptures, respectively, and the third from Wiccan writing. As you may know, I grew up both Unitarian Universalist and Wiccan. And you've heard me quote them before many times. John 10:10 reads, "I came that they might have life and have it abundantly." Deuteronomy 30:19 reads, "I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life." And in the Wiccan charge of the goddess, we are told, "Let there be beauty and strength, power and compassion, honor and humility, mirth and reverence within you." Maturity has less to do with knowing how to change a tire than it does with knowing how to change your life, your attitude, your worldview, or your survival strategies when they are no longer working, when they are curses instead of blessings, when they are life-denying instead of life-affirming. Part of being mature is fully perceiving the world in all of its complexities and contradictions, beautiful and broken, filled with blessings and brutality. And the other part of being mature is making choices to bring the blessings like compassion and humility and reverence into the world so that life might be more rich and nourishing for all. I sometimes think of life in this world as a table set out before us. The table is spread with a glorious feast. It is the biggest potluck that you have ever been to. There is such abundance, but careful choices must be made as we partake together in this great meal. We must make choices about what we bring to the feast, as well as what we take from it. There are foods that are life-giving, healthful, and nourishing, as well as dishes that are life-denying, harmful, and depleting. On the table is compassion as well as cruelty, justice as well as oppression, forgiveness as well as vengeance, and commitment as well as apathy. I'm reminded of another image posted by a friend on Facebook. 3 large, bright red pomegranates rest on a rock next to a little sign that simply reads, "Free." The caption accompanying the picture reads, "Nice try, Hades." As you may know, in Greek mythology, pomegranates are a fruit of the underworld, the realm of Hades, god of death. And any person, mortal or divine, who eats of the fruit becomes bound to the underworld, to the realm of death. While we have no reason to fear pomegranates, the warning is one worth considering. As we partake of the feast of life, we must be mindful both of what we contribute as well as what we take. Are we making wise choices that create, nourish, enrich, and transform life for the better? Or are we making choices that harm life? And these are questions that matter now more than ever. While I was busy procrastinating on Facebook in preparation for this sermon, I saw many of you posting about Greta, Autumn, and Isra, 3 amazing young climate activists. And one post in particular hit me in the heart, which was the video that I'm sure that many of you have seen of Greta Thunberg speaking at the UN Climate Summit. In it, she says, "This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back home at school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words. And yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering, people are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth." The table has been set before us. There are choices to be made, choices that help protect and renew life on this planet, and choices that help deny it, that destroy life on this planet. And we are all called to come to the table as mature adults, with hearts and hands open to the real challenges and choices before us that we need to be mature enough to deal with, so that our children, like the baby that we dedicated today, do not have to suffer the consequences. And the consequences, as we know, are grave. We face the most profound environmental, political, and spiritual crisis of our age. Our civilization is unsustainable. Life as we are now living it is devastating our planet. Our society is feasting on pomegranates and ash and must be drastically transformed if future generations are going to be able to have life, let alone have it abundantly. There are things that must be done in political, technological, and other areas. And here in this congregation, we try to do what we can to participate in the work that must be done. Our environmental justice team is leading us in some of those efforts. But a unique role that we can play as a congregation is to join with other faith communities in responding to the spiritual dimensions of that crisis. When we focus on our spiritual growth, we cultivate deep inner resources that we can bring to bear on all the other dimensions where our attention and care are needed. 2 weeks ago, Reverend James preached on spirituality. More specifically, he preached on how to grow our souls in a sermon titled, "How to Be a More Spiritual Person in 15 Minutes a Day." He talked about growing in compassion, gratitude, forgiveness, and commitment. Spirituality is about cultivating those qualities which are sometimes called fruits of the Spirit. Spiritual growth is about finding the seeds of those qualities within and around us, planting them in our innermost being with care, nurturing them every day and letting them grow and flourish. And spiritual maturity is about letting those qualities grow within us until they are ready to be harvested and brought to the feast of life in which we partake, to enlarge the abundance of life so that all may participate for generations to come. Heaven knows we need these spiritual fruits. Our world needs more compassion, more gratitude, more forgiveness, and more commitment if we are to face the challenges before us. But these spiritual fruits have the power to help nourish us and others for the work ahead. And when we attend to them individually and collectively in our lives and in this community, then amazing things become possible for our world. A world that desperately needs humanity to grow up. May the fruits of our spirits as individuals and as a community mature to lush ripeness and help nurture and nourish the whole world. And I would like to end again, as we ended our readings earlier, with the words of Judy Chicago. And then all that has divided us will merge. And then compassion will be wedded to power. and then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind. And then men, women, and people of all genders will be gentle. And then people of all genders will be strong. And then no person will be subject to another's will. And then all will be rich and free and varied. And then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many. And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance. And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old. And then all will nourish the young. And then all will cherish all life's creatures. And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth. And then everywhere will be called Eden once again. May it be so. And now please rise and body your spirit and join in singing our closing hymn. It's number 298 in your gray hymnal, Wake Now My Senses.